As a result, they have unique worship. These are the ones who are not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These were redeemed from among men, being first fruits to God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no deceit, for they are without fault before the throne of God. These 144,000 witnesses have a unique experience with God, and it gives them a unique worship song. The saints, the church, have their own unique worship. The saints, the church, have their own unique worship song to sing to the Lord as well, because we have our own unique experience. Ours is a song of redemption and praise, that we were not his people, we were his enemies, and he's redeemed us. He made us his people. And then the martyred saints that were under the altar, they have their own song coming from chapter 7. So, when you look at this 144,000 and say, oh man, they got a special song that no one else can know. Well, we all do. We all have that unique experience. Like when I gave my testimony last week, I think it was last week, it was the week before, but it's my unique testimony. Nobody else has been through exactly what I've been through. Some have been through a lot more, some have been through less, but we all have our own unique testimony. That's the thing that we can all keep in mind is I look at a lot of these guys that have been through so much in their life, and I go, man, that guy's got an amazing testimony. Mine's kind of weak. Doesn't matter. It's mine. And it's what God brought me through. And then even through mine, you can still easily see God's work. We see a lot of people going around and they try to claim that they are members of the 144,000. The Jehovah's Witnesses chose their name because they claimed to be the 144,000. But they had 144,000 people that are the witnesses, and everybody else is just kind of, they're part of the religion, but they're not the 144,000. And they're not going to make it into heaven. But the requirements are very strict. It says that they are virgins. I'd be willing to bet that if you looked at most of these 144,000 in the Jehovah's Witnesses, they're not virgins. They probably have families. And they're at the end with the Lord. They're going through the tribulation. We haven't seen the tribulation yet. So how can somebody back in the 30s be part of that 144,000 when here we are 90 years later and we're still not at that point? It speaks of the first fruits. They are the first fruits before the Lord. Well, when we give our tithe is supposed to be our first fruits. It's supposed to be, I get paid, I take 10% of that immediately, set it aside to give to God. I don't say, all right, well, first I've got my mortgage, I've got my electric, I've got to pay this, I got to pay, and tithes will be right here. Tithe is supposed to be our first fruits that has no obligation other than to go towards God. These guys, their first fruit, their only obligation, the only thing they have to worry about is serving God. They don't have families. That says that they're virgins. They haven't been with anyone. They have no family, no kids, nobody else that they are responsible for, responsible to, except for God. And so it says that they follow Jesus everywhere he goes. So because they don't have any of the responsibilities, they're able to just pack up and go wherever Jesus tells them to go wherever he goes. It also speaks of the great harvest that we saw in chapter 7. We're going to see also later on in the chapter here. They're the first fruits of that great harvest. So they're harvested, they are put into God's service, and an innumerable number will follow. It says they're found without fault before the Lord. And no one is perfect except for Christ. We already know this. But what does Christ do? Christ, through his sacrifice, through his blood, presents us as faultless before the Lord. So because they are wholly devoted to him, because they have his blood covering them, they are found without fault before the Lord. Jude 1:24 says, now to him who is able to keep you from stumbling and to present you faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy. We're covered by that same thing as these 144,000 are. It says, then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to you, or to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people. Saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea and springs of water. Now, by this point, enough crazy stuff has happened, enough supernatural things have occurred that everybody should know by now that God is real, that God has happened, that God is here. Of course, there will always be those who don't. Like I said, I fully believe that when the impossible happens, when every Christian on earth just vanishes in the twinkling of an eye, they're going to say, said this was happened, but it was aliens. It wasn't what they said, it was aliens. They're going to find reasons to explain away every supernatural thing as being whatever. I mean, they're not going to care what people believe in as long as it's not God. And so there's going to be people still deceived. So this angel is going to be flying around preaching the gospel to everyone, making sure that everyone has a chance to hear the gospel, that everyone hears the truth. And people currently are trying to assign contemporary meanings to it. I mean, all through history, Adam Clarke back in the 18th century said that it was an organization, I didn't write down the name, but there was an organization that translated the Bible into many languages. They translated it into almost every known language. And he said that this is that angel flying and making sure the gospel goes to all nations, tribes, and tongues. Well, no, it wasn't. John Trapp said back in the 17th century that it was John Wycliffe, for all the work that he did in getting the Bible out there and translating the Bible, that he was that angel that was distributing the gospel. Today, there was a TV network that everybody that talked about it didn't mention who the network was, but it was like CBN probably, or someone like that, one of the Christian networks, who put a satellite into space to, for their communication satellite, and they called that, and they named it Angel 1, saying that that's going to be the angel because it's flying through the sky and it's proclaiming the gospel. But personally, I say God says it's an angel, it's an angel. I mean, everything else that we've seen happen already, an angel flying around proclaiming the gospel is about the least weird thing to come up so far in Revelation. Kittle writes, here is the bitter irony of their lot. Though they damn themselves eternally by the refusal to face the truth, one day they'll be forced to face it. Sooner or later, the glory they refuse to give the Creator willingly will be torn from them by the spectacle of his wrath. I think I put that in the wrong spot, but it still fits for here. The angels flying around proclaiming the gospel to everyone because so many have already rejected it, so many have ignored it, so it's given them one last chance. And those who refuse to listen, those who refuse to honor God, we already know that every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Every knee shall bow. That means whether we choose to bow, whether we choose to worship him now, or we refuse and we're facing him on Judgment Day, everybody was going to bow at some point, whether we choose or whether we're forced to just by the awe of seeing him. And by that point, it's too late. And this angel is a fulfillment of Jesus' prophecy back in Matthew 24, verse 4, where he said, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. So we see this angel flying, proclaiming the gospel before everyone, and we know the end is almost here. And we're on chapter 14, there's only 21 chapters. We're 2/3 of the way through. And another angel followed, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she has made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And then a third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast in his image and receives his mark on the forehead or on his hand, he himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever. And they have no rest, day or night, who worship the beast in his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. Coming from Walvoord, he says, prophetically, Babylon sometimes refers to a literal city, sometimes to a religious system, sometimes to a political system, but all stemming from the evil character of historic Babylon. It says that it led all astray into adultery, all astray into fornication, both physical, literal, and spiritual. Because Babylon, when it's referring to a religious system or a literal city, it's talking about pleasure seeking, the wealth that Babylon had, and the fact that that wealth of theirs and the lack of moral led them down many dark paths of seeking after their own flesh, seeking after what they wanted. And it led them into idolatry. There we go. Kind of, side note, it's kind of interesting that both of those words sound very similar, adultery and idolatry. And then they're used to represent the same basic things in the Bible quite frequently. It isn't going to be like, oops, I got the mark, now I'm damned and I'm going to hell. You will know that you're choosing the mark. You will know that you're worshiping the beast and that you're taking the mark. It's not going to be a trick. Those who don't know the Lord, those who are outside of the church, they may be deceived into thinking, oh yeah, this is great. They're going to worship him because he's worthy of worship according to everything that they know. They've seen him, they've seen his power, they've seen his abilities, they've seen him killed and brought back, they've seen him work great miracles and be proclaimed by the false prophet who will work great miracles. They're going to worship him, and it will make sense to them because they don't know God. And the mark is directly tied to worshiping the beast. It's not going to be, like I mentioned before, credit cards was the big scare back in the 70s. The credit card is going to be the mark. You get a credit card in at least a cashless society, which is the mark. If you don't have a credit card, you won't be able to buy and sell. Well, here we are 50 years later, and cash is still going. It was microchips. Scientists are figuring out how to put microchips in that'll link up with your phone, your computer, your smart homes, and everything. And people say, that's going to be the mark of the beast. That might be the technology used. It very easily could be. But it'll be accompanied by a literal mark of the beast. People say now the COVID vaccine is going to be the mark of the beast, that Bill Gates is going to use the COVID vaccine to give us all the mark of the beast and again, it will be a literal mark. So unless like the vaccine needle has a stamp on the end of it too, it's probably not going to be that. And also, I don't know who gets a shot in the back of their hand or their forehead. So we want to make sure that we are watching, that we are just a little bit paranoid, yes, because we know things are going to go down, but we don't want to be jumping on every single thing. This is the mark, and making everybody look at us and say, man, these Christians are crazy. We want to make sure that we are being wise as in our paranoia. Because we know that that the world is going to turn against us. So we know it's coming, but we need to make sure that we're not just seeing every little thing. We don't want to be Chicken Little, the sky is falling, and then when it finally does, nobody believes us because those Christians are crazy. And when you take that mark, because you will be worshiping the beast, you will be choosing your side by taking it, you're going to end up drinking of the full strength of the wrath of God. Compares it to wine. And in Proverbs, he speaks about wine, talk about people getting drunk and waking up the next morning with mystery pains that they don't know about. Like, who hit me? What happened? Because you got drunk, you fell down. And it's one of the many reasons why I don't get drunk anymore. But it's stronger to make it more effective. And that would be full strength wine. Today we'd call it fortified wine because you add vodka or some liquor to it to make it stronger. So it's going to be something that's going to way stronger than what we've seen. And I don't want to say I like this, because I don't. I don't like the idea of people seeing the wrath of God, because I don't want to see people destroyed or killed because of their lack of faith. But people always say how people try and discredit the Bible because back in the Old Testament, God is full of wrath and this and that, and in the New Testament, he's all soft and lovey-dovey, and that's why I like the Old Testament God. God didn't change. God's covenant with us changed. We were given grace because of our covenant with God. He still has all the wrath that he had in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, he had all the love that he still has in the New Testament. God didn't change. And we see these last few chapters are all about God's wrath because he honored his covenant and other people didn't. The rest of the world didn't. So now they lose grace because they weren't under that covenant of grace, and they get the wrath. God didn't change. God has made a new deal with us. They'll be tormented with fire and brimstone. Like I spoke on before, brimstone is kind of like napalm. It's a rock, but when you light it, it melts and sticks to whatever it's burning. There'll be no rest, no reprieve, just straight torment and burning 24/7. This is the result of choosing the wrong side, of choosing to go against God. People that say, well, why would God send someone to hell? And he doesn't. God has his righteousness that he must uphold. He gave everyone, he made it clear, he told us, this is how you are condemning yourself. God is not condemning us. And all these people that take the mark, they're choosing to peace, strength, steadiness, to rest. Those that die in the Lord are blessed. Why? Because to be absent, the bodies are present with God. As Paul said, to live is Christ, but to die is gain. You may have a pretty cushy life right now, but when we get in front of God, you're in paradise. It says, those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord. If you're not in the Lord and you die, that's more of a curse than a blessing. And 14 through 20 says, then I looked, and behold, a white cloud. And on the cloud sat one like the Son of Man. I always like when it says one like the Son of Man. He means it's the Son of Man. Having on his head a golden crown, and in his head a sharp sickle. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, thrust in your sickle and reap. For the time has come for you to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. So, the harvest of the earth is ripe. This means everybody that's going to come to the Lord has come to the Lord. There's going to be no more coming. So, reach down in there and reap. Pick up your harvest. Take what you've got. And let's move on. So he who sat in the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. Then another angel came out of the temple, which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle. And another angel came out from the altar, who had power over fire. It's generally believed that this is the angel that cast the incense down to the earth, because he's at the altar where they burn the incense, where they do the burnt offerings. And he cried with a loud cry to him who had the sharp sickle, saying, thrust in your sickle, your sharp sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. So Jesus has already come and reaped his harvest. Now we have another angel coming who's going to reap the next harvest. The symbolism here is pretty clear. Jesus, you get picked up by Jesus, you're being picked up to life. The angel is almost certainly the angel of death, the one that God sent to Egypt to take the firstborn child. Because when he sticks in his sickle and reaps the earth, it says the angel thrust his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. Now, you don't have to go past that to realize that this is not the place to be. I mean, generally speaking, to be pressed is not a good thing. They used to use that to kill people back in the 1700s. There was a guy, I forget who he was or why he was being killed. He died. And they asked him, do you have any final words? Are you willing to repent or recant? And he says, more weight. Well, these people, they're not outside the city. They didn't even want to do it in the city because of the mess it's going to make. And blood came out of the winepress up to the horses' bridles for 1,600 furlongs. And it's impressive to think of blood deep, that so deep it comes up to the bridle of a horse. But they say, what the heck is a furlong? I don't know. For 200 miles. This is a picture of when the armies of the world are arrayed against Christ, and he just slays them all with the power of his word. Because we already saw a few chapters ago that they're talking about an army of 200 million being brought out. I imagine that 200 million in the army, you'd get a lot of blood if you were to press them. And so we see two different pictures here. We see one group reaped by one like the Son of Man, or more literally, one group reaped by the Son of Man, by Jesus. And the other by an angel with power over fire. One group is reaped into life, the other is reaped into death and wrath. The harvest is ripe on both sides. It's ready to go. There's no more that's going to happen. The people have set their ways. Everyone that's going to be saved is saved. Everyone that's going to reject the Lord has rejected the Lord. And so rather than dilly-dallying along, they say the harvest is ripe, and they come and they take care of it. And we see back in Isaiah chapter 63, a prophecy of Jesus' arrival at this time, waiting. Jesus didn't need any help because he is God. And this is the same Jesus that everybody looks at as, they want to make him this sweet pacifist hippie and say that Jesus is weak and this and that, but Jesus was loving. He was patient. He was not weak. He just took out the entire armies of the world by himself. It says, for the day of vengeance is in my heart, and the year of my redeemed has come. He's trodden them in the winepress in his anger. It looks like evil's winning. Pastor Chuck was talking about interviews. This was probably back in the 80s, because it was his through the book winning. The world is turning to evil. Evil's going to overcome good. We're winning. There's nothing you can do about it. Good can't stop us. Because that's the lie that Satan's telling. That's the lie that Satan believes. Or at least that Satan tries to convince himself to believe. I think Satan knows exactly what's coming, that Satan knows exactly how the end's going to be, because he's already gone against God once. It didn't work out for him then. It's going to come out worse next time. But when we feel like the world's coming against us, when we feel like things are going badly and we don't know how we're going to get out of it, we just have to remember Isaiah 63, Jesus looked and said, who was there to help me? So Lord, I pray right now that you would remind us constantly of your power, that you would help us, Lord, to have rest, to have peace in the knowledge of your power. And that knowing, Lord, the